Mack hated the quiet. It wasn't just a mild discomfort or a fleeting annoyance. It was a deep-seated loathing that gnawed at his very soul. The silence was a constant reminder of his solitude, a stark contrast to the cacophony of his thoughts. Every time the world around him fell silent, his mind would erupt in a symphony of regrets, fears, and unspoken words. It was as if the quietness had a way of amplifying the noise within him, making it impossible to escape his own mind. It wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was the kind of silence that felt heavy, oppressive, like a thick fog that wrapped around him, suffocating him slowly. The stillness of the evening landscape, the deserted streets at dusk, and the empty park benches at night all seemed to mock him, reminding him of the emptiness that had taken root in his life. The quiet was not a respite. It was a relentless predator, always lurking, always waiting to pounce. It was a predatory silence, a monster lurking in the shadows, waiting to devour him. The shadows in the alleyways, the dark forests at night, and the creepy, dimly lit streets all seemed to come alive in the silence, their presence magnified by the absence of sound. Every creak, every rustle, every whisper of the wind felt like a threat, a reminder that he was never truly alone. The silence was a living, breathing entity, feeding off his fear and despair. The absence of sound was deafening, amplifying the echoes of his past, the ghosts of his memories. Each step he took on the empty, desolate streets, each glance at the abandoned buildings at dusk, brought back a flood of memories he wished he could forget. The silence was a cruel reminder of the life he once had, the people he had lost, and the mistakes he could never undo. It was as if the quietness had a way of peeling back the layers of his soul, exposing the raw, unhealed wounds beneath. He craved noise, any noise, to drown out the deafening silence that screamed in his ears. The bustling urban scenes, the chaotic streets, the noisy environments, they were his refuge, his escape from the relentless quiet. But even in the midst of the crowd, he felt lost, disconnected, as if he were a ghost drifting through a world that no longer recognized him. The noise was a temporary distraction, a fleeting reprieve from the silence that always found a way to creep back in. The ticking clock on the wall mocked him with its relentless rhythm. Each tick a reminder of the time slipping away. Each tock a reminder of the moments he could never reclaim. The clock tower in the deserted town square, the clock in the quiet park, they all seemed to conspire against him, their steady, unyielding rhythm a stark contrast to the chaos within him. The passage of time, once a comforting constant, had become a cruel tormentor, each second a reminder of his dwindling sanity. Each tick a hammer blow to his skull, each tock a reminder of his dwindling sanity. The pain was relentless, a constant throbbing that seemed to echo the rhythm of the clock. The distress he felt was palpable, a physical manifestation of the turmoil within him. The riverbank, once a place of solace, had become a place of torment, the gentle lapping of the water a cruel mockery of the peace he so desperately sought. The silence was not just a sound, it was a presence, a force that seemed to invade every corner of his mind. He took another swig from his glass, the amber liquid burning a fiery trail down his throat. The alcohol was a temporary escape, a fleeting moment of numbness in a world of pain. The outdoor bar, the campfire, the dimly lit alley, they were all places where he sought refuge, where he tried to drown his sorrows in the bottom of a glass. But no matter how much he drank, the silence always found a way to seep back in, its presence a constant reminder of his grief. But even the sting of cheap whiskey couldn't dull the sharp edges of his grief. The sadness was a constant companion, a shadow that clung to him no matter where he went. The whiskey bottle, the drink in his hand, the stare at the outdoor cafe, they were all symbols of his despair, his futile attempts to escape the silence that haunted him. The alcohol was a temporary balm, a fleeting moment of relief in a sea of pain. He couldn't escape the silence, not really. It was always there, lurking in the background, waiting for the moment when the noise would fade and the quiet would take over. The park at dusk, the empty street at night, the deserted beach, they were all places where the silence seemed to come alive, its presence a constant reminder of his solitude. No matter how far he ran, no matter how much he tried to drown it out, the silence always found a way to catch up with him. It followed him like a shadow, clinging to him in the crowded bar, whispering in his ear as he walked the lonely streets. The outdoor market, the city street, the park bench at night, they were all places where he felt the presence of the silence, its whispers a constant reminder of his isolation. The noise of the crowd, the bustle of the city, the quiet of the night. They were all backdrops to the silence that haunted him, a constant presence that he could never escape. It was a constant reminder of what he had lost, of what he could never escape. The bridge, the old photos, the river, they were all symbols of his past, of the life he once had and the people he had lost. The silence was a cruel reminder of the memories he could never escape, the pain he could never forget. It was a presence that haunted him, a constant reminder of his grief and his solitude. The silence was his penance, his personal hell. It was a constant reminder of his mistakes, his regrets, his losses. The bench at night, the solitary place, the empty street. They were all places where the silence seemed to come alive, its presence a constant reminder of his pain. The silence was not just a sound, it was a presence, a force that seemed to invade every corner of his mind, a constant reminder of his grief and his solitude. Sarah's death was a symphony of silence, punctuated by the sound of her blood. He could still hear it, a sickening gurgle, a wet, sucking sound that replayed in his nightmares. It was the sound of life draining away, of his world collapsing in on itself. The memory was a raw wound, constantly rubbed with salt. He had found her in their kitchen, a crimson stain blooming on the white tile like a macabre flower. Her eyes, wide with shock and something else he couldn't decipher, stared accusingly at him.
Her lips, usually curved into a warm smile, were parted in a silent scream.
The image was seared into his brain, a grotesque tattoo he couldn't scrub away. He could still feel the warmth of her blood on his fingertips, the sticky residue a constant reminder of his failure to protect her. After Sarah's death, Mack's life had spiraled into a vortex of despair. The vibrant colors of his world had faded into a dull, oppressive gray. Every morning he woke up with a heavy heart, the weight of his loss pressing down on him like an unrelenting force. The once lively and cheerful man had become a ghost of his former self, drifting aimlessly through the remnants of his shattered existence. The weight of his grief was a crushing burden, threatening to suffocate him. He often found himself standing at the edge of the cliff, staring out at the vast, tumultuous ocean, feeling as though he was on the brink of being swallowed by the waves of his sorrow. The crashing waves mirrored the turmoil within him, a constant reminder of the storm that raged in his heart. He sought solace at the bottom of a bottle, the burn of cheap whiskey a temporary anesthetic to the pain that gnawed at his soul. Each sip was a desperate attempt to drown out the memories that haunted him, the echoes of Sarah's laughter, the warmth of her touch. But the relief was fleeting, and the pain always came rushing back, more intense than before. He had been a good cop once, respected, even admired. His colleagues had looked up to him, and the community had trusted him. He had been a beacon of hope, a symbol of justice. But now, those days felt like a distant memory, a life that belonged to someone else. The man who had once stood tall and proud was now a broken shell, consumed by his own demons. Now he was a shadow of his former self, haunted by his past, drowning in a sea of guilt and regret. The foggy forest he wandered through was a reflection of his mind, a labyrinth of confusion and despair. Every step he took was heavy with the weight of his mistakes, the bridges he had burned, the lives he had failed to save. His days were spent in a drunken haze, his nights plagued by nightmares he couldn't outrun. The park bench had become his refuge, a place where he could escape the relentless torment of his thoughts. But even in his sleep, he found no peace. The nightmares were relentless, a constant reminder of the life he had lost, the love he had failed to protect. The bottle offered a temporary escape, a way to numb the pain that pulsed through him. But it was a double-edged sword, a poison that slowly eroded his will to live. Each drink was a step further into the abyss, a surrender to the darkness that threatened to consume him. He knew it was a dangerous game, but he couldn't find the strength to stop. But it was a dangerous game he played, a slow suicide that chipped away at his sanity. The deserted road he walked was a metaphor for his life, a path that led to nowhere, a journey without a destination. He was lost, adrift in a sea of despair, with no hope of finding his way back. Each drink was a nail in the coffin of his former life, a testament to his self-destruction. The rooftop had become his sanctuary, a place where he could be alone with his thoughts, away from the prying eyes of the world. But even there, he couldn't escape the reality of his situation. The bottle was his constant companion, a reminder of the man he had become, a shadow of the man he once was. Section 4. Whispers of doubt. The official report ruled Sarah's death an accident. It was a conclusion that seemed straightforward, almost too convenient. The authorities had quickly closed the case, citing a tragic fall as the cause. A tragic fall, they said. The kind of unfortunate mishap that could happen to anyone. But to those who knew Sarah, the explanation felt hollow, lacking the depth and complexity of her life. But Mack couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. He had known Sarah better than anyone, and the circumstances surrounding her death just didn't add up in his mind. The whispers of doubt gnawed at him, fueled by his guilt and the nagging feeling that he had missed something crucial. Every quiet moment was filled with the echo of questions unanswered, and the weight of his suspicions grew heavier with each passing day. He replayed the events leading to her death, searching for a clue, a detail he might have overlooked. He walked the paths they had once strolled together, hoping to find a sign, a piece of the puzzle that would make everything clear. But the memories were fragmented, like shards of a broken mirror reflecting only distorted images. Each recollection was tinged with doubt, each fragment a reminder of his failure to protect her. He clung to the hope that uncovering the truth would bring him peace, a glimmer of light in the darkness that had enveloped him. The search for answers became his beacon, guiding him through the murky waters of his grief and confusion. He began to see conspiracies in the shadows, hear whispers in the wind. Every rustle of leaves, every flicker of movement in the corner of his eye seemed to hint at a hidden truth, a secret waiting to be uncovered. His paranoia grew, a toxic vine choking the last vestiges of his sanity. The more he searched, the more elusive the answers became, and the more he doubted his own perceptions. He was a man possessed, driven by an insatiable need for answers. The quest for truth consumed him, leaving little room for anything else. Friends and family watched helplessly as he spiraled deeper into his obsession, unable to reach him through the thick fog of his doubts and fears. Mack's journey had become a solitary one, marked by sleepless nights and endless questions, as he sought to piece together the fragments of a mystery that refused to be solved. Section 5. Crimson Dreams. Sleep offered no escape. His dreams were haunted by the same horrifying images, the same sickening sounds. He would wake up in a cold sweat, his sheets twisted around him like a shroud, the metallic scent of blood filling his nostrils. He would see Sarah's face, contorted in pain and fear, her blood-stained hand reaching out to him, her voice a strangled whisper, begging him to save her.
Save me!
He would try to reach for her, but she would always be just out of reach, her image fading into the darkness. These weren't dreams, he realized. They were memories, fragments of a past he couldn't escape. They were a cruel reminder of his failure, his inability to protect the woman he loved. The sound of her blood, a constant echo in the caverns of his mind.